On the edge of the city, there was a long empty road called Harbor Line. During the day, it looked completely ordinary. A quiet industrial street with warehouses, old offices, and a few abandoned parking lots. Nothing interesting ever happened there. Most people drove through it without even noticing. But sometimes, very late at night, the fog rolled in from the water. Thick, heavy, silent. When that fog covered Harbor Line, the entire street looked different. The streetlights became dim circles floating in white mist. The buildings looked distant and distorted, and the road felt strangely empty. Marcus had driven through Harbor Line many times. His job required him to make late-night deliveries across the city. Most nights were simple. Pick up packages. Drive across town. Drop them off. But one night, everything changed. It was just after 1:40 a.m. Marcus was driving his small delivery van through the Harbor Line when the fog suddenly rolled in. It came quickly. Within minutes, the entire street disappeared behind thick gray mist. Marcus slowed down. Visibility dropped to only a few meters. The headlights barely cut through the fog. He leaned forward, trying to see the road better. Great, he muttered. The GPS screen flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. Marcus continued driving slowly. The road ahead looked empty. Just the usual warehouses. Parking lots, storage buildings. Then something appeared in the fog. A shape. Tall. Standing beside the road. Marcus slowed the van even more. What is that? He whispered. As the headlights moved closer, the shape became clearer. It was a building, a very tall building. At least 20 floors high. Marcus frowned. That can't be right. He had driven through Harbor Line hundreds of times. There were no tall buildings there, only small warehouses. But the building in front of him was impossible to miss. It rose straight out of the fog like a dark tower, rows of windows stacked above each other. Most of them completely dark, but a few lights glowed faintly high above. Marcus slowly pulled the van to the side of the road. The engine idled quietly. He stepped out of the vehicle. The fog swallowed most of the street behind him. Now the building looked even taller, almost like it was appearing out of the mist itself. Marcus looked around. The warehouses nearby were gone, completely hidden by fog. But the tower stood clearly in front of him. At the base of the building, a glass entrance door was slightly open. And above it, a dim sign flickered. Marcus walked closer to read it. The letters were old and worn, but still readable. Harbor View Towboat in Marcus felt a strange chill, because he knew something for certain. That building had never been there before. Marcus stood in front of the glass entrance. The sign above the door flickered weakly. Harbor View TOW. Letters looked old, almost faded, like the sign had been there for many years. But Marcus knew that couldn't be true. He drove through Harbor Line almost every night. There had never been a tower here. The fog moved slowly behind him, covering the road. The rest of the street had disappeared into white mist, but the building stood clear and solid, almost like the fog was revealing it. Marcus pushed the glass door open. It swung inward with a quiet creak. Inside was a lobby. Large. Empty. And strangely quiet. The lights overhead were dim, casting long shadows across the floor. The marble tiles looked cracked and worn. Dust covered parts of the reception desk. Marcus stepped inside. His footsteps echoed softly in the empty space. The lobby looked like it had once been busy. There were old chairs near the walls, a reception counter, a directory board beside the elevators. Marcus walked toward the directory. The glass covering it was scratched, but the names of the floors were still visible. 1. Lobby 2. Offices 3. Offices 4. Offices 5. Offices 6. Offices 7. Storage 9. Closed 10. Closed 11. Closed 12. Closed. Marcus frowned. Closed? He looked closer. Several of the upper floors had small warning labels beside them. Access Aristierichs. Step toward the elevators. There were two of them. Old metal doors with faded buttons. He pressed the call button. To his surprise, the elevator responded immediately. The doors slid open with a low grinding sound. Inside, the elevator looked even older. The control panel had metal buttons arranged in a vertical row. Marcus stepped inside. The doors closed behind him slowly. He looked at the buttons. They went all the way up to floor 20. But the directory had only listed 12 floors. Marcus hesitated. Then he pressed floor 5. Just to check. The elevator began moving upward. The cables hummed softly above him. The digital floor display changed. 234. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. The hallway outside was dark. Most of the ceiling lights were off. Only a few flickered weakly. Marcus stepped out. The corridor looked like an abandoned office floor. Cubicles. Broken chairs. Old computers covered in dust. He walked a few steps down the hallway. Everything looked like it had been left untouched for years. Marcus turned back toward the elevator, but when he looked at the control panel above the doors, he noticed something strange. The display didn't say floor 5. It said floor 9. Marcus felt a chill. He was sure he had pressed 5. Just then, somewhere deeper in the hallway. He heard a door close. Marcus stood in the dark hallway, staring at the elevator display. Floor 9. He was certain he had pressed floor 5, but the elevator had stopped here instead. The corridor stretched far in both directions. Old office cubicles filled the open space. Dust covered the desks. Computer monitors sat, dark and silent. Most of the ceiling lights were off. Only a few flickered faintly above. The entire floor looked abandoned. Marcus took a slow step forward. His footsteps echoed softly across the empty office floor. "Hello?" he called out. His voice disappeared into the darkness. No answer. Then he heard it again. The sound he had noticed earlier. A door closing somewhere down the hallway. Marcus turned toward the sound. At the far end of the corridor, a single office door stood slightly open, and light was coming from inside. Marcus frowned. Someone's here? He walked slowly toward the door. The closer he got, the brighter the light became. Warm yellow light, very different from the cold flickering lights in the hallway. When Marcus reached the doorway, he looked inside. The office was small. A desk stood near the window. Papers were scattered across it. And sitting behind the desk was a man. The man looked up calmly. Like he had been expecting someone. He looked older, maybe in his late 50s, wearing a simple gray suit. "Evening," the man said. Marcus blinked. "You work here?" The man leaned back slightly in his chair. "In a way." Marcus stepped inside the office. "I thought this building was abandoned." The man gave a faint smile. "It usually is." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" The man looked toward the window. The fog outside pressed against the glass like a white wall. "This building only appears sometimes," he said quietly. Marcus crossed his arms. "You mean the fog?" The man nodded. "When the fog comes from the harbor, the tower returns." Marcus felt uneasy. "Returns from where?" The man thought for a moment before answering. "From the time it belonged to." Marcus looked around the office again. The furniture looked old. Not broken, just outdated. "What year is this place from?" Marcus asked. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed toward a newspaper on the desk. Marcus picked it up. The paper looked yellowed with age. The date printed at the top read, October 12th, 1994. Marcus slowly put the newspaper down. "That's not possible," he whispered. The man stood up from the desk. "The tower was closed many years ago," he said. Marcus looked back toward the hallway. The empty offices. The broken cubicles. "But when the fog comes," the man continued, "the building remembers itself." Marcus felt a cold chill run through him. Then something unexpected happened. The lights in the office flickered. For a brief moment, Marcus heard dozens of voices outside in the hallway. Phones ringing, people talking, footsteps moving through the office like the building was suddenly alive again. Then everything went silent. The office returned to darkness and dust. Marcus looked at the man. "Does this happen every night?" he asked. The man shook his head. "Only when someone notices the tower." Marcus turned toward the hallway again and suddenly realized something strange. The elevator doors had disappeared. Marcus stepped back into the hallway. The office door slowly closed behind him with a quiet click. He looked toward the place where the elevator had been, but the metal doors were gone. Only a blank section of wall remained. Marcus walked closer. He ran his hand across the wall. Cold concrete, solid. "That's not possible," he whispered. Just minutes earlier, the elevator had brought him to this floor. He turned back toward the office. The man inside was watching him calmly from the doorway. "The exits don't always stay in the same place," the man said. Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" The man stepped into the hallway. "The tower changes while it's here." Marcus looked down the long corridor again. Everything felt different now. The air was colder, the lights dimmer. "Changes how?" Marcus asked. The man pointed toward the far end of the hallway. "There are other ways down." Marcus followed him down the corridor. Their footsteps echoed through the empty office floor. After a few minutes, they reached a stairwell door, old metal, paint peeling along the edges. The man opened it slowly. The hinges creaked loudly. Inside was a narrow staircase, concrete steps spiraling upward and downward. Marcus looked down first. The stairs disappeared into darkness. No lights below. Then he looked up. And stopped. Above them. Several floors were brightly lit. Bright white office lights glowing from the upper levels. Marcus frowned. The directory said those floors were closed. The man nodded. "They are." Marcus looked confused. "Then why are the lights on?" The man stared up the staircase. His expression changed slightly, more serious. "Because those floors never closed." Marcus felt uneasy. "What's up there?" he asked. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he started climbing the stairs. Slowly, Marcus followed. The higher they climbed, the brighter the lights became. Soon they reached the next landing. The door to the upper floor was open. Light poured into the stairwell. Marcus stepped inside. And froze. The office floor was completely different. Desks were full. Computers were running. Phones rang across the room. People walked between cubicles carrying papers and talking quietly. The office was alive. Busy. Normal. But the strangest thing was, none of the people seemed to notice Marcus. Or the man beside him. Marcus turned slowly. "What is this?" The man answered quietly. "This is the tower before it closed." Marcus looked around at the workers moving through the office. "Are they real?" he asked. The man gave a small, tired smile. "They were." Then suddenly, one of the workers looked directly at Marcus and stopped walking. Marcus stood in the middle of the busy office floor. People walked past, the desks carrying folders and talking quietly. Phones rang. Computer screens glowed. Everything looked completely normal, like a regular workday in a large office building. But something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. None of the workers reacted to Marcus. They walked around him like he wasn't there. Their conversations continued. Their work never stopped. Marcus turned toward the man who had led him upstairs. "Why can I see them?" he asked quietly. The man looked around the office. Almost like he was remembering something. "Because you noticed the tower," he said. Marcus frowned. "That still doesn't explain this." The man pointed toward the Large windows at the far end of the floor. Fog pressed against the glass like a white wall. When the fog comes from the harbor, the man explained, the building returns to the moment it remembers most clearly. Marcus looked back at the workers. Which moment is that? The man's voice grew quieter. The day everything stopped. Marcus felt a chill. What happened here? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward one of the desks. On the desk sat a newspaper. Marcus recognized the headline. Immediately, office tower closed after. INCIDNT. Marcus picked it up. The article described an event that had happened decades ago. A sudden evacuation. Strange. Electrical failures. People reporting that floors of the building were changing. Hallways leading to places that shouldn't exist. The building had been closed shortly after. Abandoned. Marcus looked around again. So these people... The man nodded slowly. They're the last moment the building remembers. Marcus looked uneasy. But they're not real anymore. No, the man said quietly. But the tower still repeats them. Suddenly the office lights flickered. The workers froze for a moment. Then everything around Marcus began to change. The office slowly faded. Desks became dusty again. The phone stopped ringing. The people disappeared. The floor returned to silence. Just empty cubicles and broken computers. The man looked toward the stairwell. The fog is leaving, he said. Marcus followed him quickly down the stairs. They reached the lobby just as the glass entrance door became visible again. Outside, the fog was thinning. Streetlights appeared through the mist. Marcus's delivery van stood exactly where he had left it. Marcus stepped outside. Cold night air filled his lungs. When he turned around, the tower was gone. In its place stood an empty parking lot, exactly like it had always been. Marcus got into his van slowly, still trying to understand what he had seen. Later that morning, Marcus searched online for Harbor View Tower. He found a single old photo. The building had once stood on Harbor Line, but it had been demolished years ago. And every photo of it showed the same thing. Thick fog surrounding the building. Since that night, Marcus still drove through Harbor Line for deliveries. And sometimes, when the fog rolled in from the harbor, he slowed down. Just to see if the tower would appear again.